Today, we're talking about how we can use our time more intentionally, more productively, and in a way that supports the kind of home and life we want. Because let's be honest, when you're surrounded by clutter, it's not just your space that feels chaotic, it's your mind and probably your calendar too. That's why we're so excited today to be joined by Anna Dearmon Kornick. Anna is a total expert when it comes to helping busy people take back control of their time. She's worked with professionals, business owners, overwhelmed parents, and even politicians to bring some structure into their day-to-day lives. And she's here today to help us do the same.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here's your host, Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Leslie. We're delighted you're here to join us as part of your decluttering journey. So whether you're brand new today or have been listening in for ages, we want to say thank you so much for being here. It means so much to Ingrid and I that you turn up every week to listen to and support us while we talk all things decluttering and organising. We'd love to help more people with their quest for a clutter-free home, and our podcast is a fantastic way for people to be inspired to take action. We have a favour to ask. If you like what you hear, be sure to hit the follow, subscribe, or like button on your podcast player. Share us with your friends or share your thoughts on the podcast by leaving a review. Welcome, Anna. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
So, we're going to have to dig deep. We're going to have to go straight in and go, politicians. Tell us a little bit about your background, Anna, and how you came to be working with politicians.
Oh my goodness. Well, I will say it's been a while, but I actually started my career on Capitol Hill in the US, in Washington, D.C., where my very first job right out of college was as a scheduler to a United States congressman. So it was my job to plan every single minute of his day. From the moment he woke up in the morning until he went to bed at night, every single moment was planned and accounted for. But as you can imagine, life throws curveballs, whether you are a politician or just a, regular person. And so, in addition to creating carefully orchestrated calendars, I was also responsible for managing the crisis of things that would pop up and when events would fall through, or when we would have an entire day full of meetings planned, and then the vote bells would ring, and then all of the day's plans would go up in smoke. So it was a really interesting first step into my professional life because not only was I trying to figure out time management for myself, a brand new young professional, but I was in charge of one of the most hectic calendars in the entire country.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting start there, really. That really is a baptism of fire there, isn't it? Straight
Absolutely.
in, right into the scheduling. So, what did you learn from that then? And that then took you forward into deciding to take that further as a career?
I learned a lot of the basics of time management. Of course, things like time blocking, things like task batching, things that I consider to be the OGs, the original, the foundations of time management. But one of the most important lessons that I learned, Leslie, was that we are all human. We are all human. My very first week on the job, I put together what I thought was the most beautiful schedule for the boss. We were able to have him meet with every constituent that requested a meeting. He had time to make it to fundraising calls and receptions and committee meetings. And I remember on Monday morning, that first week after creating the schedule, our chief of staff, his name was Clayton, he walked over to my desk and he said, "Anna, we have a problem." And my heart absolutely sank because I had no idea what he was about to say yet. I thought maybe I missed a meeting with the Speaker of the House or that maybe the White House had called. And he said, "Anna, there there is no space for the boss to take a bathroom break the entire day." I had planned this perfect on paper schedule that enabled him to do everything he needed to do except be a human.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and so I had to go back to the drawing board and completely revamp the entire week with actual real life in mind. And how often, Leslie, do we create this picture perfect plan for our day, but we forget about the things that make us human, whether it's the transitions or the messes or the unexpected toddler meltdowns that we can't account for. Life is Real life is messy, and you can have the most beautiful planner in the world, but unless you're able to pivot based on what matters most to you, none of it matters.
Exactly. And it's finding, it's quite interesting actually, because last week's podcast that we recorded was all about the 10 things that you might be doing that might be kind of making you hemorrhage time and not allowed to declutter, basically. So it had the classic things in it. Lots of people have listened to it now, the kind of social media scrolling and actually making detailed to-do lists and everything was in there as well. And of course, it's all about, and the message of that podcast really is it's not a problem to scroll on social media. We're all doing it. It's not a problem to watch TV, all of those things. We need to find balance and we need to see where our productivity is lacking because we're spending too much time doing things that are not helping us in life. So let's get back to basics then, Anna, and talk about what actually is productivity. It's a term that's bandied around all the time. Yeah, you need to be more productive. Productivity coaches, productivity. What is it? Like, what is it? And why do we need it in our lives?
Oh, I love it. Such a good question. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the word productivity
Right.
because productivity on its own just means getting stuff done, getting as much done as possible in as little time as possible. But productivity itself does not incorporate purpose. Because if you are getting a lot of things done, but those things that you are getting done don't tie to a mission, don't tie to a purpose, don't tie to your goals, that is pointless productivity.
Yeah.
That's pointless productivity. And so I tend to approach productivity and time management in a very purpose and personality driven way. How can you not just be productive, but how can you be purposeful in the way that you're spending your time? And how can you do that in a way that honors your current season, that enables you to rest and recharge and still connect with others and show up as your best self rather than just go, 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 do, because all action without rest, that's just how you get to burnout.
Yeah, definitely. So give me an example of that then, because just so what give me an example of a person that might be like, right, okay, I can be productive or manage my time or whatever we're going to call that and have purpose. Give me a tangible example of it, please, Anna.
Oh, sure. First, I'll give you the opposite.
Yeah.
So, the example of someone who is just operating based on productivity, getting things done for the sake of getting things done. When you get to the end of your day and you think to yourself, wow, I was busy all day, but what did I actually do? Do you ever can you think of a day when you felt like that? I was busy, I was frantic, but what did I actually accomplish? And chances are it's not because you didn't accomplish anything. You were doing a lot of things, but they weren't the right things that moved the needle
Yeah.
on whatever projects or goals that you have. So the flip side of that, someone who is operating with purposeful productivity, they start their day very clear on what their top three priorities are for the day because they have taken time to identify their top priorities for the week ahead that then feed into the month or the quarter or the year or whatever it is. And even if you're not being that, I don't know, diligent with your regular planning, you're still starting the day with a clear picture of what you want the end of the day to look or feel like. You've got a clear picture of what success means or what done looks like. Because when you start the day with that vision of success, every single action then becomes attuned to making that vision a reality. And it starts with creating that, with identifying and articulating, okay, what are my top priorities for the day? And how can I arrange my day in order to complete those priorities?
Absolutely. I think that's so important, isn't it? Well, isn't it, to sort of look at that and prioritize and think about that. Think about what your goals are going to be and where you want to get to. So that's when you feel real achievement, isn't it? Because you know that it's moved that needle towards almost like a higher kind of purpose, really
Yes.
where you want to get to, whether that's in line with your ethics, your mission, whatever that might be. And it can be the same in a work context, or obviously in a personal context as well. And so we will of course have different to-do lists. Sometimes it gets all muddled up together in the middle of a day, doesn't it? In terms of what we want to achieve with work and what we want to achieve personally. So absolutely love that. So, talk to me a little bit about the types of things that you feel that people need to achieve the types of things that you're talking about.
Definitely. So, I'd say that when it comes to time management, whenever we want to begin improving our time management, we think, oh, I need to get my time management in order. I need to be more productive. What we tend to do is buy a new planner or download an app or look for some type of productivity hack or podcast. Maybe it's even been my podcast, which is about time management, but we tend to look for tools or quick fixes. But the
Mm.
truth is that good time management doesn't start on the pages of a planner or a color-coded calendar. Good time management starts by getting to the heart of what matters most to you in the form of your vision and your values. When we don't have a clear understanding of where we're going and what we want, this ties back to that top 3 priorities for the day. When we don't know where we're going, every single decision that we make about how we spend our time doesn't really matter. It's kind of like Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat. When Alice asks the Cheshire Cat, which way should I go? And the Cheshire Cat says, well, where are you going? And she's like, well, I don't know. Well, then it doesn't matter. That's exactly what life feels like. That's the hamster wheel. That's when we feel like we're just spinning our wheels. And so, what then do we need in order to make the most of our time? Well, I like to think in terms of a toolbox. In my time management coaching, I teach something called the HEART method. And HEART stands for habits, energy, attention, recharge, and time. And there are very few struggles that we encounter in our life that cannot be solved with one of those 5 tools, whether it is forming a habit in order to reduce your decision fatigue, creating a new routine, which goes alongside habits in order to create a sustainable rhythm in your life, energy, understanding your peak energy times in the day. Because again, you can have the most beautifully designed calendar, but if you don't have the energy to follow through, you're not going to have the motivation to work through the things on your list. And then attention, which we all know at this point, we are living in a world that is absolutely designed to fracture our attention everywhere we turn. And that's our most valuable asset at this point, our attention. And so, what can we do to strengthen our attention to make sure that we're staying recharged with rest, recreation, and relationships? It's almost like a spice cabinet. Based on what you're cooking, which spice do you pull from the cabinet to make whatever you're doing just a little bit better?
Just remind, I was kind of looking away, Anna, because I was just writing them down because I love them, and I'm sure you're going to talk more about them. So habit, energy, attention, routine, and what was T?
Recharge and time.
Time. Oh, recharge. Sorry, recharge.
Yes, recharge. One of the most underestimated time management strategies out there.
Right, wow. I love that, and it's so simple as well. So, yeah, fantastic. Absolutely love it. And you're so right. I think what we were talking about last week in the podcast, we were really probably talking more about the attention sappers there when we were talking about um the things. But generally when we're talking about decluttering, we certainly talk quite a lot. Obviously, we talk a lot about habits and routines. We talk a lot about energy. So we talk about tuning into your levels of energy, working out what time of day you're most productive. I mean, I was talking last week on the podcast about the fact that towards the end of the day, that's not when I'm going to do my most creative work. So that's when I'll fiddle around with my Asana and, like make it look pretty and reprioritize for the following day and just do things that probably are a little bit meaningless. Well, they're not meaningless, they're important things. But I'm not going to do that at 9 o'clock in the morning, because if I do that, I'll hemorrhage loads of time, by faffing around, because I like it way too much because it's nice and simple. And so interesting. So, and what sort of routines and things do you think that we can incorporate within our day to be more productive?
Oh, this is such a fun question because, when you think about routines, I'm going to bet the first thing that popped in your mind was a morning routine. When we hear the word routine, we tend to think about morning routines because that's the one that tends to get the most attention. How are you starting your day? There are books written that are devoted specifically to morning routines and Instagram posts about the billionaire's morning routine and all this kind of stuff. But I believe that there are actually 5 essential routines that help us show up as our best selves. These 5 essential routines serve as the foundation for everything else that we build our life on, because it creates the routine, the rhythm, and it reduces the decision fatigue that we experience, and it enables us to make better decisions about how we spend our time, where we direct our energy, and what we give our attention to. And all of those things impact how we show up in the world. And so those 5 routines are, of course, your morning routine, because we can't live without that, starting your day, your evening routine, transitioning to a good night's sleep, your workday startup routine, that rhythm that takes you from not work brain to work brain and helps you move into a state of focus. Your workday shutdown routine, which is that bookend of your workday, which helps you transition from work brain to not work brain. One of the most important routines that we could possibly have if we want to feel more present in our downtime, it's your workday shutdown routine. And then finally, that 5th routine is a weekly planning session of some type. And that weekly planning session is going to look different for all of us, but it's a time to get a bird's eye view of your week ahead, to make decisions before they become problems, to spot obstacles before they get in your way, and to essentially get your game plan for your week. A good coach is never going to head into a game without some kind of a plan or a playbook. And so this is your time to create that playbook for your week ahead. So again, it's morning, evening, workday startup, workday shutdown, and weekly planning.
Do you know what I love about this, Anna, is it's so closely aligned. Of course, all of these things, when we talk about routines, resets, all of the things that we're talking about at the moment, it's so closely aligned to what we teach here at the Declutter Hub. So I hope people are hearing some of the things. That's what that means in the context of decluttering. But of course, decluttering is all about, productivity and life and getting things together. Once you've got less clutter, you can spend more time doing the things that you want to do. So one of the things that we advocate for really is, when of course, we advocate a morning reset and an evening reset. And we talk quite a lot about thinking about when the best time is for that for you. And so obviously that will be different. If you're a sort of busy mum of 3 with 3 kids and you've got to get them off to school, if you've got the benefit of coming back after the school run, for example, you might decide that that's when you're going to do your kind of morning reset almost. But other people, if you've not got the beauty of that and you've got to go straight off to work, then you might have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do that. Do you know what I mean? And so it's about thinking where that time is. And I think the other thing that we talk quite a lot about as well is timing yourself to understand how long these things take, So a lot of people miss that bit out and either overthink it or underthink it. So I think, it's very much like we're like time, how long it takes to empty the dishwasher in the morning, time, how long it takes for you to do your morning routine, to get yourself in the shower and get yourself ready. And so, once you've got those ideas and examples and, the factual information about how long that's going to take you, then you're not going to run out of time, which is mostly what happens, right? rather than get more time back. So I love the way it's
Definitely.
so closely aligned to what we teach here at the Declutter Hub, and of course the planning and the importance of planning is super, super important. So you're an advocate of a weekly planning session. So do you want to give us an idea before we pop to a break about what that weekly planning session should or could look like?
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about mine just to give
Yeah,
you
go
some
for it.
inspiration. So, I tend to begin my weekly planning session by opening up my calendar to get a bird's eye view of the week ahead. And one of the first things that I'll assess is, what is this week going to feel like? Is this kind of a normal week? Is this going to be more hectic than normal? Or is this week going to feel more laid back because I have fewer meetings on the calendar? Because that then impacts all of the decisions for the rest of the week. Once I kind of understand what the week is going to feel like, then I'll start plugging in time blocks to accomplish my most important priorities for the week ahead so that I'm consistently moving my goals forward. The next thing that I make sure is set is kid drop offs and pickups. My husband and I, we have two little girls who are in two different schools, who go to different practices and different things, and they've got to be shuttled around. And so on my calendar, our calendar is a really important communication tool in our family. And so I'll make sure that it is clearly entered into the calendar who is taking which child to school, and I will send my husband calendar invites. And that is just, it works for us so well. From there, adding in transition time. Just like you said, we tend to underestimate how much time things take us. And we also tend to get lost in the transitions. For example, if we're heading to a doctor's appointment, we may allow ourselves the amount of time it takes to get from point A to point B, but we won't incorporate the time it takes to find a parking spot, to walk from the parking lot to the doctor's office, to take the elevator up to the fourth floor, to check in. And then before you know it, you're 30 minutes late to your appointment. And so, really making space for the transition periods throughout the week, make sure that I don't overschedule myself.
Yeah.
And when we run late places, it's more than just me who's affected. It affects my girls and the way that they feel because they pick up on that chaotic, frantic energy. And of course, it's not kind to the people who you are making wait, which it's just a feeling that we don't like. And so transitions, and then from there, I have a quick discussion with my husband about his week, and he then takes my overview and makes a meal plan and a grocery list for the week. He
Right.
is sort of our house chef, and so that's something that he handles as we're partners in the household. And then from there, he usually takes the girls to the grocery store, which kind of gives me a quiet house for a bit. I check the weather, and then I pull my girls' clothes for the week because that is one thing that I can do on Sundays that's going to make every single morning for the rest of the week so much smoother because it's one less decision that I have to make in the morning when I know I'm not going to be my best. It usually takes me about 10 a.m. to wake up, let's be honest. And I know that
Mhm.
about myself. And so, I mean, to quick recap, it's an overview of the week ahead, making sure we know who is going where with logistics, creating transition time buffers, meal planning, grocery list, weather, and kids' clothes.
I know weather. I think because our weather here is just so we just take it as it comes. Do you know, I was telling Anna before we came the day we're recording this, it's the day that it's like 32 degrees in England. And I said, as opposed to in the States where everyone's got aircon in the house and 32 degrees is like quite calm. I'm like, we're all roasting and sweating.
Oh no.
We don't know. We're obsessed with the weather, but we don't kind of live by it because we never quite know what it's going to be. Anna, thank you so much. We're going to pop to a break and we're going to come back and talk more about wonderful productivity after the break. Welcome back. I really, really enjoyed talking about the weekly planner and a weekly planning session. I kind of want you to come to my house, I think, and do mine as well. But I think we've all got our own version of that where we think about it. And so yours is obviously very well thought through, very meticulous. You probably do it at a similar time each week and all of those kind of things because you've been working this and ultimately this is the job that you do. Now, for me, that kind of planning session, particularly from work, happens on a Friday. So on a Friday
Mhm.
afternoon, I look at the week ahead and go, what does next week look like? What can we change? What can we ditch? Normally, things like that. These ideas that you've got, like, yeah, we're going to do that in that week, we're going to do that. And then you're like, no, that's not quite the way that it's going to work. And so that would be, it's not really transition, but it's that change and reprioritizing based on what the week ahead looks like. Same with family time, often that's me. I do my weekend reset on a Saturday. That's when I'm thinking about doing the shopping, doing the meal planning, and actually, resetting the house and thinking about what's going to happen over the weekend. So it's about finding something that's going to work for you. I think that's the important part of it, isn't it? That fits into kind of your life. So I'm really interested for those people. Obviously, an evening reset we're probably familiar with in terms of what that looks like in a household. I'd love to know about your switch up. I can't remember what you called it, the kind of transition from kind of home life to work life and the transition out of it, please.
Yes. So the workday startup and the workday shutdown routines,
Right.
basically the morning and evening routine of your workday.
Yeah.
And these are routines that so often get forgotten because whether we are commuting from our kitchen to our home office or we are commuting from home to our office building, a lot of times we get into the office, we sit down and we go. We already feel behind because emails have been coming in and we just kind of start working. And when we sit down and start working, we're not able to begin our day with the end in mind. We're not able to begin our day with a plan, feeling present, feeling calm. We are starting our day with a bit of a chaotic energy, and it's really difficult to shake that chaotic energy when that's what you bring into the beginning of your workday. And so, a workday startup routine is a short series of steps. It's doing a physical routine that creates a mental shift. So it can be as simple as something like if you work from home, sit down at your desk, open up your laptop, write down your top 3 priorities for the day, and make sure that your water or your coffee has been refilled. That is it. It is not something that is meant to be incredibly complicated or complex. But what performing this short series of steps in order does is it signals to your brain that it's time to focus. I have a good friend who also works from home, doesn't have the typical commute, and she has a work sweater that she keeps at her desk. And so whenever she sits down to begin work, she puts on her work cardigan, which is a part of that physical signal that, okay, it's time to focus. You could light a candle, you could put on a certain type of music, but it doesn't really matter what the cue is as long as you are consistent with it from day to day because it puts you into a mindset of focus. But it's that routine at the end of the day that makes a huge difference. Because again, just like many of us start our workday by opening our laptop and diving into the first thing or getting lost in emails, many of us tend to close out our workday by getting up and walking away. That's it.
Yeah.
Getting up and walking away. And what happens when you get up and you walk away is that you are taking with you all of the open loops and unfinished work. Now, there's a principle called the Zeigarnik effect that tells us that our brains have a preference for things that are unfinished. That's why we lay in bed at night and think through the things that are on our to-do list, because our brain wants to focus in on the things that are unfinished. And so when you just get up from your desk and walk away, it's no wonder that you continue thinking and ruminating on all of your work activities and reaching for your email when you really want to be present with your family in your limited downtime. And so a workday shutdown is, again, a small series of physical steps, but also very purposeful steps that enable you to close those open loops, even if your work isn't technically finished. Because let's be real, in the world that we live in now, very rarely is all of our work completely finished. It's just like putting a bookmark in a project that's still ongoing. And so a really effective workday shutdown routine is going to have you plan, prepare, preview, plan, and prepare. That's it. Preview, plan, and prepare. Get a preview of what's coming tomorrow, because this is going to remove that need for you to think, okay, what's my first meeting? Who am I meeting with tomorrow? What am I doing? Because those are the kind of things that we mull over in the evenings. So you get a preview of your next day. And then you look at, okay, what is my plan for tomorrow? What do I want to accomplish? Do I want to go ahead and think through my top three now, just so that I already know what it is so I can hit the ground running for tomorrow? Maybe it's, oh, I know that I want to spend time working on this specific project. And then the last P, prepare. What can I do now, briefly, to ensure that I am ready for tomorrow? Maybe if you know that you have a meeting with a new client, you can go ahead and pull some of the materials for that. You can send a confirmation email. What can you preview? What can you plan? And what can you prepare? Because when you assess, okay, what was completed from today? What's still open from today? And you tell yourself, okay, I am done for today. You are almost tricking yourself into thinking that the work is done. So you can be more present. You know that it's there for you tomorrow. And so really that workday shutdown, that's the secret to being more present in the evenings, because you're closing the loops for now, knowing how you're going to reopen them tomorrow.
I love that idea. It's a real light bulb that's gone on there for me, Anna. The fact that I think, what was it called? The Zeigarnik theory?
The Garnick effect, yes.
Zeigarnik effect, where you talked about the fact that our brain loves these kind of open sort of problem type things. And that's a real light bulb for me, because that's what it is. And that's what my brain's like. Do you know what I mean? And so I was thinking all the time, and I do the kind of startup routine and the close down routine. I know that's not what it's called. I apologize. So I do something like that. I probably am better at the startup than I am the close down, apart from at the end of a week, because things start coming in, people start coming in, and it's just hard, isn't it, sometimes to give a finite kind of here we are done. I was interested to know actually whether, because you've obviously been working and coaching people in productivity and time management for quite a while, have you seen a quite detrimental effect with with working from home, how that affects people's ability to do that? Because obviously when you go into the office, it's much easier to start that. You've got a very designated kind of start up and close down to your day in principle, right? At least you're leaving for the day and there's a travel and a commute in the middle of it. So when people are literally walking like I do, like I'm sure you do as well, Anna, from your kitchen to your office, has that proven more difficult for people to get their heads around?
You know, in a way, I would say yes, because when you're working in an office, the commute is obvious. You don't have to put thought into it. You don't have to really be intentional around leaving the office, because you get in your car, or you get on the bus, get on the train, and you go home. And so when I'm working with clients who maybe are working from home for the first time, and they are really struggling with the boundary between work and home, because it's all blended now, is we use that workday shutdown to create an artificial commute. I actually worked with one client, Marcus. He was an engineer in Dallas, Texas, and he would finish the day in his home office. He would go outside and take a walk around the block, and then he would come back inside and start his evening at home. And that walk around the block was the mental decompression that he needed to really transition into being at home in the evening, even though he had been at home all day. One thing that we do at our house, I have a sliding door, like kind of like a barn door, pocket door style of my office, and it looks right into my living room. And so if that door is open, when I'm in the living room, kitchen, we have an open concept floor plan, I can see into my office. And so that door has to be closed to create that separation. And so when you're working from home, it might require a little bit more creativity. And if you're looking for ideas, send me a DM on Instagram. I'll help you figure it out.
Yeah.
But but then you begin to have more freedom around the way that you shut down.
Yeah, I think it's interesting actually. What you're talking about the person that that walks around the block, and I know one of my husband's colleagues. They only have to be in the office 3 days a week, and so the other 2 days he gets on his, and it's a big commute in from him outside of London into London, and he does the same sort of 20-kilometer bike ride back and forth before he starts his day. So I think it's kind of similar things, isn't it?
Mhm.
And so yeah, no, really, really interesting. So. Well, thank you for sharing those, Anna. Really useful. There's so much food for thought. I think everybody's minds will be going, "Oh, how can I do that? Do I do that? Do I do a version of that? How can I improve on that?" And there's so many improvements to be made. Now, I wanted to pick your brains a little bit before we leave about tools. Okay.
Mhm.
So I know it's not about tools. We need to be intentional. We need to be working towards our purpose. Really, really important. I'm just thinking all the time because at the moment, Ingrid and I are trying desperately to be more productive, more efficient. We're looking at process all the time. We're obviously embracing things like AI all the time, which is exciting in terms of the way that it can help if you use it in the right way. And one of the things that we did this week was I was like, we really need to know how much time we're spending on things in order to actually make a change and see ourselves where the time is being hemorrhaged away. So a lot of it was kind of, it's been on there for a while, but last week I was like, we really need to do this. We record a podcast. We're telling our members, our podcast listeners about this. We need to do it. So today, this afternoon, quite by chance, I installed Toggle, which is a time management time tracker. Remembering to start to record it, I'm sure it'll be quite difficult because that's a big habit change, isn't it? But what do you think about that as a starting point for people? I know it's probably going to be people in a work context and not in a personal context. Do you want to explain what Toggle is and how you think or don't think that can help?
Sure. So I absolutely love the idea of doing a time study or a time audit. I think time study sounds nicer
Yeah.
than audit, but doing a time study is a great exercise for anyone who is ready to improve their time management and they want to understand where their time is going. And you said it's really helpful at work, but it's also incredibly helpful in your personal life as well to understand where some of those hidden time leaks are. I have clients who have done a time study before, tracking their time in 15-minute increments for a full week, 168 hours, in order to really get an understanding of where exactly their time is going. Using a tool like Toggle is an amazing help to tracking your time. It's also helpful because not only is there a desktop app that enables you to set almost like a stopwatch for yourself, but you can also download the app for your phone with a widget and very easily start and stop your time tracker on your phone if you're moving around the house or if you are out and about attending in-person client meetings or you want to track within the different parts of your day. Having that information is so incredibly helpful. The act of tracking your time is also helpful because, there's a famous Peter Drucker management quote. What is it? What matters gets, what's measured matters. I just totally butchered it. But when things matter, they get measured and vice versa, whatever. And so as you are tracking your time, you begin to make more mindful decisions about how you're spending your time because you may not want to live with the guilt of writing down that you spent 45 minutes scrolling Instagram or whatever that is. So it can positively influence your decisions to a degree as well. But you can't just stop at tracking your time. Now you actually have to look at it and analyze it. And so when you analyze your time, I love to have my clients ask this question. When in your week did you feel amazing? When were you really happy and did you feel joy? When did you feel like you were living in your genius zone, doing the type of work that you love doing? And then I love to ask, when did you not feel great? Whether it was an energy dip, we tend to experience an energy dip around 2:55, 3 o'clock p.m. every day, naturally. But when did you not feel your best? What surprised you about where you spent your time? And then what would you like? What was missing? What would you like to do more of? because sometimes we can track our time in a given week and realize, wow, I really didn't do anything social. And that's a really important part of who I am, is connecting with others. And so it can be very eye-opening in guiding the decisions that we make next about our routines and what we want to build into our routines. It can influence your agenda for your weekly planning session. You may want to start asking yourself, who do I want to have coffee with this week? What relationships do I want to build? Because I recognize that that wasn't a part of the week that I tracked. You might identify parts of your day that could be used in a better way. Okay, so yes, you've been setting your alarm for 6 a.m., but then you lay in bed for 45 minutes and read the news and scroll your phone, but you can't find time to go for a run or to work out. That time is there. Sometimes it takes a time study and really having the numbers, the data, to prove to you that it's possible.
You're so right. I absolutely love it. So obviously I'm on the right track with Toggle. Trying to remember to track it is going to be interesting. But I think, you're right. Just the act of actually thinking about what you're spending your time on, let alone tracking it, is going to be enlightening in itself. And then will allow you then to go, why am I spending so much time on this? And I'm sure it'll say you're spending way too much time just talking nonsensically to Ingrid when you should be actually doing work. That's probably what. I've not got a tag for that one, I'm afraid. But like wasting time talking to
dilly-dallying.
Yeah, exactly. That's not in there. Then when I get there and I'm like, I've worked 40 hours this week and there's only 20 hours tracked. I wonder what the other 20 hours is. And so that'll be enlightening in itself. So I don't want to take any more of your time, Anna. It's been absolutely incredible. I've absolutely loved it. So much more that we could talk about. Maybe you can come back another time and talk more about time management and productivity. But before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, like to mention to people? And of course, tell us where people can find more about you.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I will come to your house and help you with a weekly planning session if you then come to my house and help me with decluttering.
Yeah.
So if that's a deal, we'll make that happen.
Absolutely.
But if you're interested in continuing the conversation around purpose and personality-driven time management, I would love for you to tune into my podcast. It's about time. I know Ingrid is going to be joining me for an episode soon, so I can't wait to have that conversation with her and get to meet her. You can find It's About Time wherever you listen to podcasts. So if you're listening to one right now, just hop over to your search bar, search It's About Time, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the new episode that's coming out on Monday. And then if you'd like to take your time management one step further, I would love for you to check out my free video course. It's called Blueprint to Balance, and it walks you through creating your personal balance blueprint. What does balance mean to you? What does balance look like for you in this season? I wholeheartedly believe that balance is a feeling and not a formula. And so let's get to work creating your feeling. And you can get that at blueprinttobalance.com.
Oh, love it. Everybody's just scooting off now to blueprinttobalance.com for sure. Thank you so much, Anna. We'll pop all of those details in the show notes for you so that you've got them. Thank you for your time. It's been incredible. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much. We will see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.